What if the secret to building, I don't know, a $1 billion empire has absolutely nothing to do with business strategy? Like, what if all the strategies we obsess over, the marketing funnels, the algorithmic hacks, those daily routines are just fleeting distractions, and the real secret lies in enduring invisible laws that actually govern human behavior?
Right. It completely flips the baseline assumptions of this whole modern hustle culture
Yeah.
because we spend so much energy chasing the how-to mechanics of the week,
Hmm.
the trendy stuff, that we are entirely blind to the psychological foundation underneath it all.
So true. And today, we're taking a deep dive into the mind of a 30-year-old serial entrepreneur who built billion-dollar companies and spent something like 700 hours interviewing the world's most successful people just to find out what actually works.
Hmm.
You're going to learn the 4 foundational pillars of greatness that outlast any fleeting business trend, and why mastering yourself is the ultimate non-negotiable prerequisite to leading anyone else.
Anyone at all.
Right. So think about the biggest project you're working on today. By the end of this deep dive, you are going to have a completely new operating system for how you approach it.
And we are looking specifically at the introduction to Stephen Bartlett's framework, which really serves as the architectural blueprint for everything that follows in the text. He lays out his methodology, his biases, and the exact sequence of these 4 pillars.
Okay, let's unpack this blueprint. Because before we just accept anyone's laws of life, I feel like we have to scrutinize the messenger a bit.
Sure.
The text lays out his credentials, right? Founder of Flight Story and Third Web, investor in over 40 companies, managing billion-dollar valuations, advising titans like Apple, Uber, and Nike, plus those 700 hours of interviews on a platform that saw like 825% growth in a single year.
Which is massive.
It's insane. But I have to pump the brakes here for a second. The text explicitly states he's 30 years old. And I'm kind of struggling with this. How does a 30-year-old write a definitive guide on the permanent laws of life? I mean, wisdom is usually forged in decades of suffering and lived experience, not just, having a successful startup in your 20s.
Right.
Is he simply too young to be declaring laws of human behavior?
Well, that skepticism is totally warranted. I mean, we naturally conflate chronological age with wisdom because, well, historically, the only way to accumulate data about human behavior was to just live through it year by year.
Exactly. You just wait to get old.
Right. But what we are looking at here is a massive anomaly in data density. Bartlett's advantage isn't as his timeline, it's just the sheer volume, the quality, and this extreme concentration of the data he's collected.
I hear you on data density, but isn't there a fundamental difference between interviewing a CEO for 2 hours and actually living through a 10-year economic depression as a leader?
Oh, yeah.
Like, can you really borrow wisdom just by talking to people in a studio?
I mean, if you do it once, no.
Yeah.
That is just an anecdote.
Yeah.
But the mechanism changes at scale. Think about, 700 hours of interrogating the world's leading neuroscientists, top-tier psychologists, and captains of industry actually does to a human brain.
Wow, yeah.
He is actively downloading their worst failures, their blind spots, and their defining crises. When you mapped that many extreme edge cases of human performance against each other, you stop seeing individual stories.
You start seeing the patterns.
Exactly. You start seeing the underlying architecture. You recognize the overlapping variables. So he isn't claiming to have lived 700 lifetimes. He's claiming to have mapped the recurring patterns across them. And crucially, he then took those patterns and stress-tested them in the wild by building those billion-dollar companies himself.
So he's using the interviews as a sort of laboratory and the boardrooms as a proving ground?
Yes.
That does shift the perspective, and what he distills from all that pattern recognition is this very sharp, almost aggressive distinction between strategy and laws. The text literally says this is not a book about business strategy. Strategy changes like the seasons.
Which is arguably the most vital distinction in this entire introduction. A strategy is basically a localized response to a temporary environment. Like 5 years ago, the strategy for digital growth was heavy investment in Facebook ads.
Right.
But today, that specific strategy might bankrupt a startup because the privacy environment changed, the season shifted. So Bartlett is arguing that obsessing over strategy is a really fragile way to build a career.
That makes me think about thermoregulation, like the physics of how we dress for the weather.
I like that.
Yeah, so business strategy is the clothing.
Right.
If you live in a freezing climate, your strategy is to wear a heavy parka, and it's highly effective. But if the climate shifts and you suddenly find yourself in a desert, That same parka, that same strategy will literally kill you.
Right, you'll overheat.
Yeah, you have to discard it.
That gets right to the core of it. The parka is useless now.
But the laws he's talking about, those are the actual biology of the human body underneath the clothes. The human body's need to maintain a core temperature of 98.6 degrees doesn't change just because it's August, or because you moved to a new continent, or because, I don't know, a new social media platform launched. The underlying biology is permanent. These behavioral laws worked a century ago, and they will work a century from now.
Which completely reframes where we should actually be directing our intellectual energy.
Yeah.
If you understand the underlying permanent psychology, like why human beings crave status, how trust is biologically formed, what triggers a fear response you could adapt to any season.
You don't need a parka, you just figure out what you need in the moment.
Exactly, you can invent your own strategies on the fly.
But wait, I'm looking at his 5 core beliefs for how he transfers this knowledge, and I see a massive contradiction.
Okay, let's hear it.
He lays out these rules. 1, books are too long. 2, books are too complicated. 3, pictures paint 1,000 words. 4, stories are more powerful than data. And 5, truth lives in nuance and is often somewhere in the middle. Do you see the tension there?
Oh yeah, between the simplicity and the nuance.
Yeah. He wants to be aggressively simple, like cut the length, cut the complexity, but Rule 5 demands nuance. How can you ruthlessly simplify a permanent law of human psychology without turning it into just a shallow, useless bumper sticker?
Well, that is the tightrope walk of all effective communication, right?
Yeah.
Because the moment you oversimplify a complex psychological truth, it loses its utility completely. He anchors his approach to this problem with a quote attributed to Einstein, which is, everything should be as simple as possible, but not simpler.
But not simpler. That caveat carries all the weight.
It really does. It means stripping away the academic jargon and the redundant data points, but absolutely preserving the structural integrity of the truth. It is this process of extreme compression.
It's the exact physical mechanism of pulling a perfect shot of espresso.
Okay, walk me through that.
Well, if you've ever watched a master barista, their goal isn't to hand you a massive, watered-down 16-ounce cup of weak coffee. That would be like a book that is too long and too complicated, where the flavor is lost in all the excess water.
Right.
Instead, the barista applies immense, calculated pressure to extract just the absolute concentrated essence of the bean. But, and this addresses the nuance they must retain, the complex flavor profile, the crema, the oils. Because if you just hand someone a synthetic caffeine pill, you've made it simpler, sure, but you've lost the soul of the coffee.
Yeah, you lost the experience.
Right. So Bartlett is basically trying to apply pressure to his 700 hours of data to hand you the espresso shot.
I love that analogy. And the specific pressure mechanism he uses to extract that essence without losing the nuance is rule number 4, which is utilizing stories over raw data.
Which honestly feels a little counterintuitive for a guy who builds billion-dollar tech companies. I mean, we assume the modern business world runs entirely on raw data and spreadsheets. If the logic is sound, the data should just speak for itself, right? Why does he insist on stories?
To understand that, we have to look at the evolutionary biology of the human brain. Raw numerical data is an incredibly recent invention in the span of human history.
Yeah, that's true.
Our brains are not hardwired to process spreadsheets, they are hardwired to process narrative. For millennia, our survival depended on stories told around a fire.
Like, don't go near that cave because the bear's in there.
Exactly. A story about a hunt provided context, emotional stakes, and cause and effect relationships. So when you dump raw data on a boardroom table today, you trigger cognitive fatigue. The brain habituation filters kick in, and people simply tune out.
Because data only tells you what is happening. A story tells the amygdala why it matters to your survival.
Wow, yes. That translates directly to how you influence people today. When you wrap a complex truth inside a narrative, you completely bypass the friction of cognitive overload.
The listener just kind of gets it.
Right, they insert themselves into the narrative, they feel the tension, and they arrive at the conclusion organically. The story delivers the nuance that the data alone simply cannot carry.
So for anyone listening who needs to pitch an idea today, or maybe convince a skeptical team to change direction, don't bury them in a 50-slide deck. You are just drowning them in excess water.
Right, the 16-ounce weak coffee.
Exactly. Find the absolute essence of your argument and wrap it in a human narrative. Give them the espresso.
And this philosophy of keeping things highly concentrated and story-driven is perfectly mirrored in how Bartlett organizes the chaos of human ambition in the book. He takes all of this complexity and filters it down into just 4 foundational pillars.
The 4 pillars of greatness. And the sequencing here is so fascinating to me because it is entirely inward-facing at the start. You don't even look at the outside world until pillar the sec.
Pillar third is simply the self. It is. And it's rooted in a profound quote from Leonardo da Vinci that Bartlett includes, which is, "One can have no smaller or greater mastery than mastery of oneself. Those who cannot establish dominion over themselves will have no dominion over others."
Dominion over themselves. That is an incredibly heavy phrase.
It is.
It's not some passive concept like just be kind to yourself. Dominion implies a sovereign, absolute control over an unruly territory.
It's a great way to put it.
And the text lists components for this, right? Like self-awareness, self-control, self-care, self-conduct, self-esteem, and self-story. But I want to move past just listing these traits.
Okay.
What does a lack of self-dominion mechanically do to a person's goals? Like take self-care and self-control, for instance.
Well, they are biologically tethered. If you fail at self-care, meaning you chronically deprive yourself of sleep, or you manage your physical health poorly, you actually degrade the function of your prefrontal cortex.
And that's the decision-making part, right?
Exactly. That is the part of your brain responsible for executive function and impulse control.
Yeah. So your biological hardware literally cannot support your psychological software.
Yes. You can have the greatest business strategy in the world, but if your prefrontal cortex is depleted, the moment you face extreme stress, your self-control snaps.
Wow.
You snap at an investor, you make a rash financial decision, you sabotage the strategy. The same applies to self-awareness. If you lack self-awareness, your ego basically acts as a distorting lens.
Yeah. So you can't even see the problem.
Right. You interpret constructive feedback as a malicious attack.
Yeah.
You cannot fix problems because your internal dashboard is feeding you false metrics about your own performance.
So if you lack dominion, you are navigating reality with a broken compass and a failing engine.
Exactly.
Which makes it obvious why pillar the second the story comes next. Because once you fix your internal machinery, you eventually have to interface with the external world. And the text makes a very blunt, pragmatic point here. Every single obstacle standing between you and your goal is a human being.
That's true. Every transaction, every promotion, every partnership, it all requires moving a human from a state of skepticism to a state of belief.
And since we already established that humans biologically reject raw data, the tool you use to move them is pillar the second. The text literally calls stories the currency of humanity. But I want to explore the friction between these first 2 pillars for a second.
Really, let's do it.
Imagine you have a brilliant software engineer. She has coded this revolutionary product. Her data is absolutely flawless, but she has entirely ignored pillars of sect. She has 0 self-awareness. She operates on 3 hours of sleep, and she has a massive temper.
A recipe for disaster.
Totally. Furthermore, she hasn't developed pillar the second. When she pitches her product to venture capitalists, she doesn't tell a story. She just aggressively reads them the raw code.
Right, so she has ultimate technical competence, but 0 dominion and 0 currency.
Her product will die in a drawer. Not because the technology was flawed, but because she couldn't regulate her own nervous system under the pressure of the pitch. And she couldn't translate her technical competence into an emotional narrative that the investors' brains could actually process.
And that shows why the sequencing Bartlett insists on is a strict, unforgiving hierarchy. You cannot master the external environment of pillar the second if your internal environment in pillar 3 is chaotic.
It bleeds through.
It absolutely bleeds through.
Okay.
If your internal world is ruled by insecurity and exhaustion, your external story will inevitably be disjointed, defensive, and inauthentic. And humans are incredibly adept at subconsciously detecting a lack of self-mastery.
Like we just sense it.
Yes, they might not know why, but their mirror neurons will signal them not to trust you.
Okay, so let's say you do the hard, unglamorous work. You
Yeah.
gain dominion over your impulses. You craft a compelling narrative that bypasses those habituation filters we talked about. What happens next?
Well, then you inevitably become a magnet.
Right. People start gathering around you. They want to buy from you. They want to work for you. But attracting 100 talented people sounds like an absolute nightmare if you don't know how to organize them.
Oh, it's chaos.
Which brings us to pillar the third, the philosophy.
Right, so Bartlett states that an individual's personal philosophies are the single biggest predictors of their behavior. It is the underlying set of beliefs and principles that guide actions.
But let's define how that actually operates mechanically, because we aren't talking about a motivational quote painted on a break room wall. Under extreme stress, how does a personal philosophy dictate behavior?
Think of it as an automated cognitive shortcut for crisis management.
Okay.
When a massive crisis hits, say, Your company loses its biggest client overnight. You do not have the time or the cognitive bandwidth to sit down and debate every possible ethical and strategic response. Decision fatigue would paralyze you.
You just wouldn't be able to act.
Exactly. So you default to your deepest programming.
Oh, I see. Your philosophy is the algorithm that decides for you when the lights go out.
Yes. If a leader's a hidden philosophy is survival at all costs, regardless of collateral damage, that algorithm executes immediately. They will quietly lay off staff, cut corners on product quality, and hoard resources.
Yeah, we've all seen that happen.
Right. But if their philosophy is radical transparency and shared burden, a completely different algorithm executes. They will call an all-hands meeting, explain the financial reality, and take a pay cut alongside the team. You can basically forecast an organization's future simply by identifying the unwritten philosophy of its leader.
Which brings us directly to the final stage, pillar three, the team. The text points out that the literal definition of the word company is a group of people.
Right.
Every app, every service, every piece of art ultimately originates from a human mind.
And Bartlett observes that he has never seen anyone reach true greatness without the support of a group of people. But the critical distinction is that you cannot just throw a group of high IQ individuals into a room and expect greatness.
The text mentions you need the right people bound by the right culture. And when you achieve that, the math fundamentally changes. It says the output becomes exponential, like 1 + 1 = 3. But how does pillar the philosophy actually create that 1 + 1 = 3 output in pillar 3?
Well, it acts as an aggressive filter and a friction reducer. Let's say you are hiring. If you don't have a defined philosophy, you hire based purely on technical skill. You bring in 5 brilliant people, but one believes in ruthless competition, one believes in slow perfectionism, and one believes in chaotic innovation.
The friction between those operating systems will just tear the project apart.
It creates a low-context, high-friction environment. Every minor decision requires a massive, exhausting debate because there's no shared baseline of what is right.
Oh, that sounds miserable.
It is. But if your philosophy is clearly defined and communicated, it magnetically attracts people with compatible algorithms, and it repels those who don't fit, no matter how talented their resumes are.
So when everyone shares the same source code, you don't have to debate the basics. You move into a high-context environment. Trust is accelerated. You spend your energy executing the project instead of fighting over how to execute the project. That elimination of internal drag is what creates the 1 + 1 = 3 exponential output.
Right, because culture isn't about arbitrary perks or office layouts. Culture is a shared philosophy in action under pressure. If you introduce a contradictory philosophy into that team, it acts like a virus. It degrades the trust, it increases the friction, and it destroys the exponential output.
So as we step back and survey this entire blueprint, from the rejection of temporary strategy to the mastery of self, story, philosophy, and team, what is the ultimate synthesis here?
The central insight of Bartlett's Easter introduction is that enduring greatness is fundamentally an inside-out architecture. We are conditioned by society to obsess over external outside-in tactics.
Always looking for the quick fix.
Right. We hunt for the new marketing strategy, the shiny new software, the perfect hiring template. But this text reveals that those external strategies will inevitably crumble if they're not built on the bedrock of internal dominion. You must first master the chaotic biology of your own impulses and awareness. You must define the philosophical algorithm that will guide you in the dark. You must learn to package your competence into emotional narratives. Only then can you bind a team capable of exponential output. Greatness isn't a strategy you execute on a Tuesday. It is a permanent foundation you become.
Because once you forge that internal foundation, the external weather doesn't matter anymore.
You carry your own climate with you.
That is so powerful.
It really is. And it leaves us with a necessary, maybe uncomfortable question to examine.
Yeah.
Think about the friction you are experiencing in your life right now. The goal that feels stalled, the team that isn't clicking, the pitch that isn't landing. Are you failing because you lack the right external business strategy? Or is the friction actually happening because you haven't yet established dominion over yourself?
That is the mirror we all have to face before we take another step forward. Now that we have the architectural blueprint, the real question is, what are the specific materials we need to start building? Join us for the next deep dive as we unpack Law 1 and discover the 5 distinct buckets of knowledge you absolutely must fill and the catastrophic consequences of filling them in the wrong order.
Imagine, for a second, you're sitting in your front garden, enjoying a nice, quiet morning espresso.
Sounds lovely.
Right. The street is empty. The air is still. And then suddenly, this guy comes jogging up to you,
Okay.
and he is sweating profusely,
Yeah.
panting. He's wearing these, like, tired, worn-out gym clothes.
Oh, boy.
He pauses, struggles to catch his breath,
Mm-hmm.
cracks some joke you can barely understand, and then just starts frantically rambling
Like right there in your garden.
right there on your property. And he's talking about building spaceships to colonize Mars.
Wow.
He's talking about putting microchips into monkeys' brains to control computers.
Right.
And then he starts going on about creating this army of AI-powered humanoid robots
Yeah.
to, I don't know, do our household chores.
Well, if you're sitting on that porch, your immediate biological response is going to be a massive spike in cortisol.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you're looking at a person who appears, quite frankly, completely untethered from reality.
You're probably subtly looking around for an exit route.
Exactly. Or, reaching for your phone to call for help because this man is clearly experiencing a severe psychotic break.
You certainly aren't going to invite him in for breakfast.
Yo.
And you definitely aren't going to pull out your checkbook to fund his Mars colony.
Definitely not.
But here is the twist that changes everything.
Okay.
What if I told you that sweaty, rambling jogger was Elon Musk? The second you recognize his face, the second you connect that identity to the man in the driveway, the entire context of the situation just violently shifts.
It does, completely.
Suddenly, those insane-sounding ambitions, they don't seem like madness at all.
Right. They become believable.
Yeah.
We suddenly view them as like inevitable milestones of human progress rather than the ravings of a lunatic.
Yeah, I mean, people will blindly give billions of dollars to back him based on those exact same sentences.
Exactly.
They'll uproot their lives, quit their stable corporate jobs, move their families across the country just to work 80-hour weeks for him.
And they'll even pre-order products from him that literally do not exist yet,
Right.
based purely on the promise that he said he'll build them.
So the question we really need to unpack today in this deep dive is, what is the invisible difference between a visionary and a madman? Like, when they're saying the exact same words, why do we dismiss one and just, surrender our life savings to the other?
Well, the answer lies in an invisible architecture that we all subconsciously evaluate when we look at another human being.
Right.
We are constantly automatically calculating someone's professional and functional capacity.
Yeah.
And STEVEN Bartlett, in his book, The Diary of a CEO, he breaks this architecture down into a framework he calls the 5 buckets.
The 5 buckets.
Yeah. It is this precise mechanic of human potential.
Okay.
The reason we believe Musk isn't crazy is that we intuitively sense his buckets are overflowing.
Ah, I see.
And Bartlett argues that understanding these 5 buckets, what they are, and crucially the sequential order in which they must be filled, is the fundamental difference between building an enduring, world-changing career or, well, constructing a professional life that inevitably collapses under its own weight.
Right, like a house of cards.
Exactly.
So let's break down the actual anatomy of these 5 buckets.
Yeah.
Because once you see this framework, you really start seeing it everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. In your boss, in your favorite creators.
In the mirror.
Yes, definitely in the mirror.
So bucket number 1 is your knowledge, what you fundamentally know. Bucket number 2 is your skills, what you can actually do, which is essentially your knowledge applied in the real world.
Right.
Bucket number 3 is your network, who you know.
Right.
Bucket number 4 is your resources, what you have, meaning your capital, your assets, your tools.
Yeah.
And finally, bucket number 5 is your reputation, what the world thinks of you.
And those 5 elements represent the sum total of your leverage in the world.
Your leverage, yeah.
The fullness of those buckets determines the scale of the reality you're capable of bending.
Wow, bending reality, I like that.
But looking at that list, we run into a major, psychological and cultural roadblock.
Okay, what is that?
We are biologically and socially conditioned to obsess almost exclusively over buckets 4 and 5.
So the resources and the reputation.
Exactly.
Right, I mean, if you're listening to this on your commute right now and you scroll through your social media feeds, nobody is posting a photo of their slow, painful acquisition of knowledge.
No, of course not.
Nobody posts about spending 4 hours debugging a broken string of code or, the 6 failed sales calls they made this morning.
No, it's not glamorous.
It isn't. What we see are the resources, the cars, the vacations, the massive funding rounds.
Right.
And the reputation. Right. The Forbes 30 under 30 lists, the fancy new job titles on LinkedIn, we are just completely blinded by the final 2 buckets.
We obsess over them because humans are visually driven creatures. And, you know, for thousands of years of evolutionary history, status and resources signaled survival.
That makes sense.
If you have the most resources and the highest reputation in the tribe, you are safe.
Right. You're not getting kicked out of the cave.
Exactly. But that evolutionary wiring tricks us in the modern professional world.
How so?
We start believing that the resources and the reputation are the core assets, but they aren't.
Right.
Resources and reputation are merely lagging indicators of the first two buckets.
Lagging indicators.
Yeah, they are the shadows cast by knowledge and skills.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
When you see someone with a massive reputation and immense resources, like Musk, for example, what you're actually witnessing is the downstream compounding effect of years, perhaps decades, of them aggressively and relentlessly filling their knowledge and skill buckets.
You know, it reminds me of the mechanics of leveling up a character in a role-playing video game.
Oh, an RPG. Yeah.
Right. Like, you start out at level 1. You're wearing a burlap sack. You're holding a wooden sword.
If you're lucky.
Right, if you're lucky. And your ultimate goal is to get the high-level glowing magical armor and the castle, which in this analogy are the resources and the reputation.
Exact.
But the game physically prevents you from just equipping the high-level gear right out of the gate.
It literally won't let you.
Right. You have to walk out into the woods and grind for experience points. You have to fight low-level monsters, take damage, and slowly accumulate knowledge and skills.
Yeah.
It is the friction of the grind that actually unlocks the gear.
That friction is so important because it's the only way knowledge actually converts into a skill.
What do you mean?
Well, knowledge is passive, right? You can acquire it by reading a book on a beach.
Sure.
But skill requires application. And application requires encountering reality, making mistakes, and adjusting.
Right. The real world pushes back.
Exactly. The glowing armor in your analogy is completely useless if the player wearing it doesn't have the underlying stats to actually swing the heavy sword.
Right. They'd just be crushed by the weight of it.
Precisely.
Which brings us to a fascinating psychological hurdle that many ambitious people face when they start trying to fill these buckets, especially, you know, early in their lives. It's the moral dilemma of the empty buckets. And Bartlett shares this deeply personal story about this in the book that I think a lot of people are going to relate to.
Yeah, it's a powerful story.
When he was an 18-year-old startup founder, just grinding away on his first tech company, he found himself haunted by this heavy, persistent moral question.
Right.
He kept asking himself, is focusing all my time and energy on building this business, which is, you know, ultimately just going to generate wealth for me, is that actually a noble pursuit?
Yeah.
Or should I drop this selfish endeavor, fly back to Africa where I was born, and invest my time directly into helping people and saving lives?
It is the classic tension between self-interest and altruism. And it's a tension that our culture actively amplifies.
How so?
Well, we're routinely conditioned to view self-development, wealth accumulation, and the pursuit of power as inherently dirty or selfish acts.
Right, like capitalism is evil. Inherently.
Exactly. Conversely, we are taught to view immediate self-sacrifice, giving away whatever little you have right now, as the ultimate moral good.
Even if it bankrupts you.
Right. And it creates this paralyzing guilt for anyone with high ambitions.
So this guilt is just eating at him for years as he builds his business. And eventually, Bartlett finds himself at this packed, exclusive event in New York City. The room is hosted by Radhanath Swami, who is this world-renowned monk, spiritual leader, and author.
Right, a very revered figure.
Very. And the atmosphere in this room is dead silent. I mean, hundreds of people are just hanging on every single syllable this guru utters.
You can just imagine the energy in that room.
Totally. So when the floor opens for questions, Bartlett, who has been carrying this years-long internal conflict, he raises his hand.
Okay.
He stands up in this sea of mesmerized followers and asks the guru his burning question.
Right.
He asks, is building a business and enriching myself a more noble pursuit than going to Africa to try and save lives?
Oh, man. You can imagine the tension in the room right then.
Yeah.
A young, ambitious entrepreneur asking a monk to basically validate capitalism over direct humanitarian aid.
Right. It's like a trap.
It really does. But the guru's response is this profound disruption of how we typically view altruism.
Yeah, because the guru doesn't give a long, winding philosophical answer. He just stares at Bartlett. He gives him this long, blinkless, piercing stare that just strips away all the noise in the room. And then he simply says, you cannot pour from empty buckets.
You cannot pour from empty buckets.
Yeah.
I mean, if we isolate that phrase and apply it to our framework of professional potential, it completely reframes the concept of ambition.
Oh.
The guru wasn't telling Bartlett that his desire to help Africa was wrong. He was telling him that altruism, on any scale that actually moves the needle of human suffering, requires massive capacity.
Right. You cannot give what you do not possess.
Exactly.
If you have no water in your own bucket, you can tip it over all you want, but nothing is going to come out to nourish the soil.
Bartlett had this sudden realization about leverage.
Right.
If he had flown to Africa as an 18-year-old with empty buckets, meaning no money, no influential network, no highly developed operational skills, his impact would have been severely constrained by reality.
Yeah, he's just one guy with good intentions.
Exactly. He might have been able to volunteer his manual labor, perhaps save or improve one life. And while that is a beautiful, deeply human act, his leverage would be almost zero.
Right.
However, by investing in himself first, by aggressively filling his own buckets, becoming a multimillionaire, gaining a light business and marketing skills, building a massive global network of influential people, he literally altered the mathematics of his potential impact.
He transformed himself from a single pair of hands into an entire distribution network.
Yes.
By giving himself that leverage, he now has the actual, tangible capacity to help millions of people through philanthropy, media platforms, funding schools, all of it.
The underlying takeaway here is a necessary paradigm shift for anyone listening who struggles with the guilt of ambition.
Yeah, that guilt is so common.
It is. But investing in yourself is not a betrayal of your desire to do good in the world. Self-development is the absolute prerequisite for massive positive external impact.
Right.
Hoarding knowledge, building skills, and accumulating resources aren't inherently selfish acts if the ultimate goal is utility.
Utility, I like that.
You are doing the difficult, unglamorous work of filling your bucket so that one day you have enough volume to tip them over and water the world.
Okay, so we've established the anatomy of the buckets, right? And we've cleared the moral hurdle of why it is actually necessary to fill them. But the absolute crux of Bartlett's law, the part that actually dictates whether you succeed or fail, is not just about filling them.
Right.
It is strictly, unforgivingly about the order in which you fill them.
The sequence is the entire game.
The sequence.
Yes, the buckets are completely interconnected, and the causality flows in one direction only, from left to right.
Okay, so you have to start with bucket one, knowledge.
Exactly.
You read the books, you study the market, you learn the theory.
Right.
When you take that knowledge and force it through the friction of real-world application, it becomes bucket two, a skill.
Yes.
Once you possess valuable knowledge and highly effective skills, you become professionally valuable to other people, which naturally and automatically attracts bucket three, a network.
Naturally, yes.
And with a strong network, leveraging your knowledge and skills, your access to bucket four, resources, expands exponentially. And finally, the combination of what you know, what you can do, who you know, and what you have generates bucket five, your reputation. It's like this cascading chain reaction.
It is. And knowledge is the highest yielding investment you can make precisely because it is the spark that ignites that entire sequence.
Right.
But human nature rebels against this process.
Oh, of course it does.
The left to right progression requires patience, it requires enduring a period of obscurity, and it requires failing quietly while you develop skills.
And our egos despise obscurity and failure.
Your egos hate it.
Our ego looks at that left to right process, calculates how many years it's going to take to grind out the foundational knowledge and skills, and just says, can we just skip to the good part?
Exactly.
Like, can we just bypass the struggle and get the rewards? We get tempted to jump straight at a flashy job title bucket 5 or jump at a massive paycheck bucket 4 without actually possessing the underlying foundations of buckets 1 and 2.
And giving into that ego-driven temptation is the professional equivalent of trying to build the roof of a skyscraper before you have poured the concrete foundation.
That is a great visual.
Gravity is going to win every single time.
Yeah.
And to illustrate how destructive this sequence skipping can be, Bartlett shares the rather tragic story of a young man named Richard.
Right, Richard. So Richard was this incredibly talented 21-year-old junior employee working at Bartlett's social media company back in Manchester.
Right.
He was bright, ambitious, had a ton of raw potential. But one day, Richard walks into Bartlett's office with some massive news. He tells him he's just been offered a job as the CEO of a brand new marketing startup halfway across the world in New York City.
Oh.
The new company is offering him double his current pay, a massive equity package, and a chance to live the C-suite life in Manhattan.
I mean, for a 21-year-old junior employee, that sounds like hitting the absolute lottery.
Oh, totally.
It is an immediate, intoxicating injection into bucket 4, resources, and bucket 5, reputation.
Yeah.
He is instantly bypassing years of grinding and acquiring that glowing armor on day one.
Right. And Bartlett writes that he initially didn't even believe him.
I wouldn't either.
Right. He couldn't fathom a legitimate business offering a 21-year-old with zero management experience, zero leadership training, and zero operational track record such a massive foundational role.
Yeah, it sounds fake.
But it was entirely true. Richard accepts the offer, packs up his life, moves to New York, and suddenly finds himself leading a team of over 20 people.
Oh, man.
But I want to push back on Bartlett's framing here for a second.
Okay, go for it.
Because we live in a culture that actively celebrates what Richard did.
We do.
Isn't there an entire industry of self-help and professional advice built around the mantra, fake it till you make it?
Oh, absolutely.
Didn't Richard just do what every motivational speaker tells you to do? He said yes to a terrifying opportunity. He took a massive swing and figured he would just learn the ropes on the fly. Why is that viewed as a mistake?
It's a vital question, and it really requires us to separate healthy ambition from dangerous delusion.
Okay.
There is a massive structural difference between stretching your current skills and completely abandoning the sequential laws of reality.
So it's the difference between trying to bench press, say, 10% more than your previous maximum to build muscle, versus walking into a gym for the first time in your life, loading 300 pounds on the bar, and expecting to lift it.
Yes.
You aren't stretching your muscles in that second scenario. You are going to drop the bar and crush your chest.
Exactly the right mechanism. Fake it till you make it works when you are faking confidence while applying actual existing skills.
Oh, wow. Okay, say that again.
It works when you are faking confidence while applying existing skills. It does not work when you are faking the skills themselves.
Right.
Richard bypassed the foundational buckets. He had never managed a P&L sheet.
Right.
He had never navigated complex team dynamics or hired and fired personnel. He had the title of a CEO and the salary of a CEO, but his internal architecture was completely hollow.
Right. He was wearing the heavy armor, but he didn't have the stats to move in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And reality is incredibly unforgiving when it encounters a hollow foundation.
It is undefeated. Within 18 months, this once promising New York startup completely folded.
It's not surprising.
No. They hemorrhaged their key employees, they rapidly ran out of money, and the entire venture got shrouded in controversy over toxic management practices and operational failures.
It's just a disaster.
A complete disaster. Richard ended up unemployed, thousands of miles from home, his reputation severely damaged. And ironically, he found himself back on the job market, desperately looking for the exact same junior roles he had left behind in Manchester.
Because the market is a gravity machine.
A gravity machine.
Yes. It eventually corrects all structural imbalances. If your resources and reputation wildly exceed your actual knowledge and skills, gravity will violently pull them back down to match your true foundation.
Wow.
Taking a job primarily for a cash increase when that job offers zero opportunity to acquire new knowledge or refine your skills is a trap.
That's a trap, yeah.
In the grand scheme of your career trajectory, a high-paying dead-end job is actually a lower-paying job because it halts the compounding growth of your first two buckets.
That is a brutal reality check.
It is.
I mean, when we are evaluating a new job, a pivot, or a new opportunity, we have to fundamentally prioritize the acquisition of knowledge and skills over immediate cash or status.
Always.
Because if the concrete foundation is deep and solid, the money and the titles will inevitably follow. And more importantly, when they arrive, they will stay.
Exactly.
You won't have imposter syndrome because you won't be an imposter. You'll have the mechanics to back up the title.
Right.
But if you skip the line, it is just a matter of time before the roof collapses. Which brings us to the final and perhaps the most urgent concept in this chapter, the professional earthquake.
Yes. It is a sobering concept, especially in today's economic climate,
Right.
but it's also an incredibly empowering one once you understand how to inoculate yourself against it.
Right. So Bartlett defines a professional earthquake as a sudden, unpredictable career event that violently and adversely impacts you.
Mm-hmm.
And we are living in an era defined by these tremors.
You really are.
An earthquake could be your entire industry getting disrupted overnight by generative AI.
Okay.
It could be a sudden mass layoff where your department is just eliminated.
Out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. It could be a global pandemic that shutters your physical business, or your startup simply running out of runway and going bankrupt.
It is the terrifying moment the tectonic plates of your career violently shift beneath your feet, entirely outside of your control.
Yeah.
And what makes these earthquakes so devastating for most people is what they are capable of stripping away from you in the blink of an eye.
Right. Let's look at the top 3 buckets.
Right.
An earthquake can violently wipe out your network. Bucket 3.
Oh, absolutely.
You'd be amazed how quickly people stop returning your emails when you no longer have the title of CEO or VP in your signature.
It's cold, but it's true.
It really is. An earthquake can instantly drain your resources. Bucket 4.
Yeah.
Your salary vanishes, your equity goes to zero, your budget disappears.
Gone.
And it can completely tarnish your reputation. Bucket 5.
Hmm.
If your company goes under in a public way, the industry chatter can turn against you overnight. In a matter of days, through no fault of your own, you can lose the top 3 buckets entirely. You can wake up with no contacts, no money, and no status.
Which is absolutely paralyzing if those top 3 buckets were the only things holding up your identity and your sense of security.
Right.
If you skip the line to get the title and the money and an earthquake takes them away, you are left with nothing.
Just empty space.
Yes. But here is the unbreakable core of Bartlett's Law. Here is the profound reason why the sequential order is a matter of professional survival.
Okay.
No professional earthquake in the world, no matter how severe the magnitude, can unteach you your skills.
Wow.
No algorithm, no economic crash, and no vindictive boss can reach into your brain and erase your knowledge.
They can take the company car, they can take the corner office, they can take the 6-figure salary, but they cannot take what is actively wired into your neurology.
Exactly. If you have aggressively filled those first 2 buckets, if you truly possess deep compounding knowledge and highly developed stress-tested skills, you are functionally immune to permanent ruin.
Immune to permanent ruin.
Yes, you possess the engine. And because the sequence always flows from left to right, if you have the engine, you can always rebuild the rest of the car.
Right.
You can generate a new network, you can attract new resources, and you can build a new reputation because the raw materials required to produce them are safely locked inside of you.
It makes me think of a world-class chef.
Oh, great example.
Right. You can drop a massive professional earthquake on a master chef. You can take away their flagship restaurant. You can strip them of their Michelin stars. You can empty their business bank accounts and take away their entire kitchen staff.
Take it all away.
Take it all. But you cannot make them forget the mechanics of flavor.
No.
You cannot unteach them how to perfectly sear a piece of meat or, balance an intricate sauce. You can drop that chef in a rundown diner with a rusted stove and cheap ingredients, and within a year, they will have a line out the door again.
Absolutely.
The food critics will return, the investors will be knocking, the resources and reputation return because the skill remains intact.
Sure. That is the ultimate defense mechanism against an unpredictable world. Build your foundation on the only assets that are entirely immune to disaster.
So, tying this all together, the big aha moment of this entire deep dive is a fundamental redefinition of what wealth actually is.
Mm-hmm.
True prosperity isn't the number sitting in your checking account right now.
Oh.
It certainly isn't the prestige of your current job title, because both of those things are fragile and temporary.
Very fragile.
True prosperity is the invisible architecture of what you know and what you can execute. Applied knowledge creates a skill, and that skill becomes an autonomous, gravity-defying engine that will automatically and inevitably generate your network, your resources, and your reputation over and over again, no matter how many times you have to start over.
The mandate from Bartlett is undeniably clear. Hoard knowledge and skills, not just gold.
Not just gold.
Gold can be stolen, lost, or devalued by inflation. Knowledge compounds continuously and forever.
So we now know why we need to relentlessly hoard knowledge and skills. We understand the mechanics of the buckets and the critical importance of the left-to-right sequence.
Right.
But that leaves a massive hanging question for anyone trying to apply this today. How do we actually do that?
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Right. If knowledge and skills are the ultimate currency, how do we master them faster, deeper, and more effectively than the competition?
Recognizing the need for the foundation is step 1. The methodology of building it rapidly is the natural next step in the progression of these laws.
And that is exactly where we are heading next time. In our next deep dive, we are going to unpack Law 2, which reveals a completely counterintuitive secret to mastery.
It really is counterintuitive.
It involves creating an absolute, inescapable obligation to teach. And we'll explore the psychological mechanisms of why the fastest way to learn anything is to put yourself on the hook to explain it to someone else.
It's a fascinating and slightly uncomfortable mechanism for accelerated learning that forces you to confront the gaps in your own knowledge. But before we get there, I want to leave you with a different thread to unravel regarding today's buckets.
Okay.
We talked about how hoarding skills makes you immune to an earthquake. But consider the specific nature of the earthquake we are currently facing with artificial intelligence.
Right, the AI boom.
What if the very skills you are painstakingly filling your bucket with today, coding basic software, copywriting, data analysis, are the exact skills AI will fully automate tomorrow?
Oh, wow.
If your second bucket is full of highly technical but easily automatable skills, are you actually building a concrete foundation, or are you just filling your bucket with sand?
Are you hoarding the right kind of skills to survive the automation earthquake? Something heavy to chew on. Until next time, keep digging deep. What if the words I disagree are actually like a neurological kill switch?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like a switch that practically guarantees you will lose any argument you're having.
Well, I mean, it completely flies in the face of how we're, how we're taught to communicate, right?
Right.
We spend our entire educational lives, our professional lives, being conditioned to believe that human interaction is essentially just an exchange of data.
Like a transaction.
Exactly. Like the underlying assumption is that the person with the most airtight logic or, the most robust facts, they're the one who naturally wins the debate.
Yeah, we treat every disagreement like it's some sort of courtroom battle.
Right.
Where the jury is just going to, weigh the evidence and hand the victory to the most rational party.
But the science we're looking at today proves something entirely different.
It really does.
It proves that the very second you open a conversation with disagreement, I mean, the moment those words leave your mouth, you are causing the other person to become physically and biologically incapable of processing your data.
Which is just, it's wild to think about. Unlearning that instinct, that incredibly deep urge to immediately say, you're wrong, it might actually be the ultimate key to having any real influence in this world.
Yeah, because we are so hyper-focused on waiting for our turn to speak.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're frantically preparing our brilliant rebuttals in our heads.
I do that all the time.
We all do.
Yeah.
But we completely ignore the biological reality of the person sitting across from us.
Right.
If their brain is essentially powered down in response to a perceived threat, your pristine facts and your perfect logic, they simply do not matter.
They're just bouncing off a wall.
They are bouncing off a wall.
So if my data is literally bouncing off a neurological brick wall, I'm left in a really frustrating position. Because today's deep dive is about rewiring how we approach business negotiations, leadership, and, personal relationships too.
Definitely.
We're pulling directly from STEVEN Bartlett's book, The Diary of a CEO.
Great book.
It is. And we're specifically zooming in on Chapter 3, which outlines a very bold rule. It's Law 3, you must never disagree.
Which is a provocative title.
It really is. And the mission here is to figure out how to actually be heard.
Yeah.
If anyone listening wants to thrive as an entrepreneur, a leader, or just a better partner, understanding the mechanics of conflict is what separates effective communication from just making noise.
The stakes here are incredibly high because, conflict is inevitable. Whether you're an entrepreneur trying to win over a skeptical investor or a manager trying to correct a failing strategy or even just navigating a tense conversation at home, you will encounter resistance.
Always.
The goal isn't to avoid conflict.
Yeah.
The goal is to understand what is happening under the hood of the human brain so you can navigate that conflict without triggering a shutdown.
And Bartlett anchors this entire concept with a story from his own life that is just, it's incredibly relatable.
It really is.
It perfectly illustrates our default programming.
Yeah.
He calls it the wardrobe incident.
Right, the wardrobe incident.
So paint the picture for us. It's 2 a.m., right?
Yeah, it's 2 a.m, and he's in the middle of a massive, heated argument with his now ex-girlfriend.
Okay.
She's angry, she's venting about something she's deeply unhappy about, and he decides to do what so many of us instinctively do when we feel we're right.
Oh, no.
He tries to use pure, unadulterated logic.
Of course he does.
He repeatedly tells her, I disagree. And he starts deploying these rational step-by-step counterarguments to mathematically prove why her perspective is incorrect.
He was treating an intimate relationship like a high school debate club.
Exactly.
He assumed that if he just laid out the facts clearly enough, she would suddenly stop, analyze his data, and say, yes, your logic is flawless.
I am no longer upset.
Right, exactly, which has literally never happened in the history of human relationships.
Never. But Bartlett makes a crucial distinction right off the bat between healthy and unhealthy conflict.
Okay.
Conflict itself is not the enemy. Healthy conflict is when two people are working together against a shared problem.
Got it.
You're standing shoulder to shoulder looking at an issue. Unhealthy conflict, which is exactly what was happening in that bedroom at 2 a.m., is when two people are working against each other.
You're standing face to face.
Yes, treating the other person as the problem.
In those moments, the communication is simultaneously the problem and the solution, which is a terrible paradox to be trapped in.
It's exhausting.
So the result of him using that calm, cool logic is like throwing petrol on a bonfire.
Oh, absolutely.
The more logical and detached he got, and the more he emphasized his disagreement, the louder she shouted.
Yeah, she just started repeating the exact same points over and over with increasing volume and intensity.
It escalated to the point where he tried to leave the room, she followed him, and he ended up locking himself inside his walk-in wardrobe. He literally sat in the dark in his closet until 5 a.m. while she shouted at him through the door.
It's a slightly absurd image, sitting in the dark in a closet, but it highlights a tragic breakdown in human connection.
Yeah?
His rational counterarguments achieved the exact opposite of their intended effect. And he notes that, unsurprisingly, that relationship did not last.
Right.
He was relying on logic to de-escalate the room, completely blind to the fact that his method of delivery, leading with "I disagree," was the primary accelerant for the argument.
He thought he was holding a fire extinguisher.
But he was actually holding a flamethrower.
Wow. I read that and instantly felt a pang of recognition. We have all experienced that specific flavor of frustration.
Oh, for sure.
You have all your ducks in a row. You know you are objectively, factually right. You drop the logic bomb, and then you just watch the whole situation detonate.
Yeah.
It feels like interpersonal conflict is way less like a courtroom and way more like trying to defuse a bomb together.
That's a great way to put it.
If you attack the other person while they are holding the wires, the whole thing explodes.
And if we apply that bomb diffusal reality to the workplace, the practical takeaway for leadership and negotiation is that before you engage in any kind of pushback, you have to pause and identify your posture.
Okay.
Are you attacking the problem, or are you attacking the person?
Right.
The moment you wrap your logic in a blanket of disagreement, the moment you say, "I disagree, and here is why," the other person stops seeing you as a partner in problem solving.
They just see the threat.
They instantly perceive you as a threat. Logic cannot de-escalate a situation when the nervous system of the person you're talking to feels threatened.
So let's look at the mechanics of why that happens. Because why did the wardrobe incident fail so spectacularly?
Yeah.
Bartlett wasn't being malicious. He genuinely thought he was helping by bringing rationality to a chaotic situation.
Right. He was trying to fix it.
But the failure isn't just a behavioral quirk. It is biological. We're moving from a failed romance to hard neuroscience, which is where this deep dive gets profoundly interesting.
We can all nod along to the polite idea that saying you're wrong is abrasive, but the science shows it is neurologically catastrophic to your own goals.
Neurologically catastrophic.
Yes. Bartlett sat down with Talis Shurit, a professor of cognitive neuroscience at University College London and MIT.
Sorry.
She and her team conducted a groundbreaking study published in Nature Neuroscience that maps, in real time, what happens inside our brains when we encounter disagreement. They weren't just looking at surveys or behavioral observation, they were looking at blood flow in the brain.
So they're actually seeing the physical response.
Exactly.
The setup for this experiment is fascinating because of how they isolated the variables.
Right.
They took 42 volunteers and put them in pairs. They separated these pairs with a glass wall, and then they had them lie down inside an actual brain imaging scanner, an fMRI machine. So the researchers are mapping real-time activity across different regions of the brain. They asked these volunteers to evaluate pictures of real estate, guess the value of the properties, and then place a financial bet on how accurate they thought their own valuation was.
And by adding the financial debt, they introduced actual stakes.
Right. It wasn't just a game.
It wasn't a passive guessing game. The volunteers had skin in the game. The twist is that while they are lying in the scanner, each volunteer can see the valuation that their partner on the other side of the glass just submitted.
Oh, wow.
The researchers are tightly controlling and observing exactly what happens when a person sees that their partner either agrees with their assessment or completely disagrees with it.
Think about the last time someone looked you in the eye and told you, you were entirely wrong.
Yeah.
You didn't just have a cognitive, thoughtful reaction. You probably felt a literal tightness in your chest.
Or heat rising in your face.
Exactly. Or a sudden spike in your heart rate.
Yeah.
That isn't just you being sensitive or defensive. That physical sensation is the biological shutdown Tali Sharot was watching on those monitors.
Yeah.
Because the findings of this study change everything we know about persuasion.
Yeah.
When the partners agreed on the real estate value, the specific area of the brain responsible for evaluating evidence completely lit up.
Right.
The volunteers became more confident in their bets. Their brains were actively processing the shared data. But when they saw that their partner disagreed with them,
Yeah.
that exact same part of the brain essentially went dark. It stopped processing.
It is a biological block.
A block.
Yes. The amygdala, which is the emotional processing center of the brain, perceives that social disagreement as a physical threat. Wow. Evolutionary biology dictates that being cast out of the tribe or being wrong in a social setting is dangerous.
It's life or death to the brain.
Exactly. So the amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for logic, reason, and evaluating evidence. The brain literally stops processing the incoming data to protect itself.
Wait, I have to challenge the extent of this.
Okay.
Are you saying that if I am at work and I have a colleague who makes a massive verifiable calculation error on a financial projection?
Like a real math error.
Yes, I am talking spreadsheet level black and white facts.
Oh, okay.
And I point it out by saying, I disagree with this projection. Are you telling me they physically cannot see the error just because I framed it as a disagreement? Does the brain really ignore objective facts?
The brain prioritizes survival over accuracy.
Wow.
When you say, I disagree with this projection, the underlying context being received is, I am right and you are wrong. You trigger that physiological shutdown. Their cognitive processing centers power down. They aren't consciously choosing to be stubborn or ignore your spreadsheet.
Right.
Their brain is actively protecting them from the perceived threat of your disagreement. It doesn't matter if your spreadsheet has 0 errors and theirs is full of them. The mechanism required to evaluate your flawless spreadsheet is currently offline.
That means every time I have ever started a sentence in a meeting with, well, actually, I disagree if you look at the numbers.
Yeah.
I was basically hitting a mute button on the other person's brain.
You were.
I was guaranteeing that my actual argument wouldn't even be processed.
Yeah.
It is incredibly frustrating to realize that being objectively correct is not enough if your delivery triggers a biological defense mechanism.
When the brain senses a threat, it doesn't say, oh, let me carefully analyze this new data to see if I should update my worldview.
Right. It doesn't do that at all.
It says defend the perimeter.
Defend the perimeter.
This is why people double down on incorrect beliefs when challenged aggressively. The practical takeaway from Tali Sharot's research is an absolute rule for anyone seeking influence. Never start a response with, I disagree or you're wrong.
Never.
If you do, you are instantly sabotaging your own attempt to communicate. You are ensuring they cannot hear you.
So if my data is hitting a wall and I can't start by disagreeing, I am left with a very real dilemma. Because how do we sneak our valid, necessary points past those neurological defenses?
Yeah.
Obviously, the solution isn't to just go through life agreeing with every terrible idea we hear, right?
No, of course not.
We can't let a company go bankrupt just to keep a colleague's prefrontal cortex lit up.
Definitely not.
We have to be able to correct course. So what is the actual mechanism for sneaking data past that wall?
That is the art of this entire concept.
Okay.
It is absolutely not about rolling over, becoming a yes person, or abandoning your principles. It is about understanding the mechanics of the lock before you try to turn the key.
I like that.
Bartlett introduces insights from 2 communication experts to solve this. Julian Treasure, a renowned speaking coach, and Paul Brunson, a relationship expert.
Okay.
They both point to a very specific 2-step process for effective communication that bypasses the amygdala's threat response.
So step 1 is listening so the other person genuinely feels heard.
Right.
And that doesn't mean just silently waiting for them to stop making noises with their mouth so you can talk.
No, it doesn't.
It means active, observable listening. And then step 2 is replying in a way that makes them feel understood.
They quantify this with what they call the 98% rule.
The 98% rule.
Think about the people in your life who actually possess the power to change your mind on a deeply held belief.
Okay.
It is very rarely a stranger on the internet,
Never.
and it is never an adversary. We are most open to having our minds changed by people we already agree with 98% of the time.
Because we feel that they fundamentally understand our worldview. We feel safe with them.
Exactly. The baseline is safety. Because we agree on 98% of things, their differing opinion on that remaining 2% doesn't trigger the amygdala.
Doesn't feel like a threat.
Right. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel like a threat to our identity or our status. It feels like an invitation to explore a new angle with an ally.
Ow.
The prefrontal cortex stays online, and the evidence-evaluating centers of the brain remain active.
Okay. I have to challenge this find common ground idea, though, especially in a high-stakes professional environment.
Sure, go ahead.
If someone comes to me with a marketing strategy that I know will just absolutely tank our quarterly earnings,
Yeah.
doesn't continue validating their terrible idea just to build a bridge, cross the line into manipulation?
It's a fair question.
Like, aren't I just patronizing them if my ultimate goal is still to prove them wrong and get my way?
That is the most common pushback to this methodology, and the distinction between manipulation and genuine validation is crucial.
Okay.
Manipulation is flattery. It is lying about agreeing with their specific terrible marketing strategy just to soften them up.
Which people can see right through.
Exactly. That will backfire because humans are highly attuned to insincerity. Genuine validation is about finding a shared underlying motive or a shared reality.
A shared motive.
You do not have to agree with their conclusion. You have to agree with their premise or their intent.
So in the case of the terrible marketing strategy, the shared motive is that we both want the company to succeed. We both want to drive revenue.
Yes. Or perhaps you can validate the data they used, even if you disagree with the conclusion they drew from it.
Yeah.
You can say, I completely agree with you that our younger demographic is dropping off.
Right.
And I understand why you feel this aggressive new ad spend is the fastest way to capture their attention.
Ah, you see.
You have just validated their observation and their intent. You have agreed with them. That lowers their cortisol levels. It keeps the brain receptive.
Wow.
Then you introduce the pivot. Since we both want to maximize the ROI on this demographic, here's another angle regarding the ad spend we might want to look at.
It reminds me of building a bridge before you try to send a heavy truck across a canyon.
That's a great visual.
Your counter evidence, your brilliant spreadsheet, your undeniable logic, that is the heavy truck.
Right.
If you do not take the time to build a solid bridge of shared agreement and mutual understanding first, that truck is just going to drive straight off the cliff and crash into the river.
It's gone.
The data will never reach the other side.
And the structural integrity of that bridge comes down to authenticity. You are genuinely searching for a shared belief that props open the mental door.
Right.
By starting with what you have in common, you are hacking the neurological response. You are signaling to their amygdala, I am a member of your tribe, I am not a threat.
It is the exact same heavy truck, the same alternative strategy, but one approach builds a bridge and the other just goes off a cliff.
Exactly.
I agree. We need to scale revenue. Let's look at this angle versus I disagree with your proposal. The first keeps the brain lit up. The second plunges it into darkness.
The goal, as Julian Treasure and Paul Brunson outline, is to make your words bridges to comprehension, not barriers to connection.
I love that. Bridges to comprehension.
If you want someone to process your perspective, you must first validate theirs. Disagree less, understand more.
Right.
It sounds like soft, feel-good advice until you remember the fMRI scans.
The science backs it up.
This isn't about being polite for the sake of office harmony. It is about respecting basic brain chemistry. If you don't do this, you are quite literally wasting your breath.
It reframes the entire concept of a debate.
It really does.
True influence in this world isn't about defeating someone with superior facts.
Yeah.
It is never about having the sharpest sword, because a sharp sword just makes the other person raise a stronger shield.
Yep, the defenses go right up.
If we look at the soul of this chapter, tying the neurological data from the lab and the deeply personal anecdotes from the bedroom together, it all points to one incredibly clear insight.
Influence is about alignment.
Alignment.
It is about aligning with the other person emotionally and intellectually first.
Right.
If you want to change a mind, you cannot treat that mind like an enemy fortress to be battered down with a battering ram of data.
That just doesn't work.
You must first ensure that the mind feels entirely safe, genuinely heard, and deeply understood. Only when that safety is established will the gates open.
Only then does the brain actually light up and allow your data inside.
Exactly.
Next time you are heading into a negotiation, a debate, or even just a tense conversation at the dinner table, recognize the biological reality of the person in front of you.
You have to.
Actively search for that one piece of common ground before you state your case.
Hmm.
Build the bridge before you send the truck.
That's the secret.
Now that you know the secret to bypassing the brain's defenses in an argument, wait until we explore something even more jarring.
Oh, yeah.
Why you don't actually get to choose the beliefs you are fighting so hard to defend. Think about the first time you heard about a company whose entire business model was basically convincing strangers to rent out air mattresses in their own living rooms.
Oh, yeah. Right.
You know, to other complete strangers on the internet.
Yeah.
Or think about the first time you saw a digital currency that wasn't backed by a government.
Just a bunch of code.
Just code, exactly.
Yeah.
Usually, when we look back at the most important world-changing innovations of our time, we suffer from this collective historical amnesia, I guess you could call it.
We really do.
We have this underlying assumption that these ideas arrived bathed in this glorious light of obvious brilliance, you know? Like we've imagined the clouds parted, the invention was revealed, and everyone just collectively gasped and said, oh, of course.
Right, like this changes everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, we tend to romanticize the history of progress so much. We assume the genius of an idea is just instantly recognized by the masses because, well, in hindsight, the utility of the innovation is undeniable to us now. We completely forget the messy, the really uncomfortable incubation period.
But the jarring reality is completely the opposite.
Yeah.
When true disruptive innovation actually shows up, it doesn't look brilliant at all. It usually looks utterly bizarre.
Yeah.
It looks stupid. Sometimes it even borders on looking, illegal.
Oh, absolutely.
And that brings us to this massive, glaring tension, which is really the focal point of our conversation today. Why is it that incredibly smart, highly successful, industry leaders who have spent decades mastering their craft, why do they constantly dismiss the very things that end up completely destroying their entire industries?
It's a phenomenal question. The assumption is that someone at the top of their field would naturally be the first to spot the next big wave, right?
I would think so.
But historically, they're almost always the ones fighting it the hardest. They don't just miss the boat, they actively stand on the shore and mock the boat as it sails away.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into the hidden traps of human psychology and business innovation. We're pulling heavily from STEVEN Bartlett's book, The Diary of a CEO, and we're specifically unpacking Chapter 4, which outlines his Law 5.
Which is, you must lean in to bizarre behavior.
Right. And we're also bringing in some foundational psychological research from Elliot Aronson to really figure out why smart people reject the future.
It's so important.
Our mission for this deep dive is to map out the psychological traps that wire us to reject unconventional ideas and figure out how to stop ourselves from making that exact fatal mistake in our own careers.
Yeah, the mechanics underlying Bartlett's Law 5 are profound. He is essentially asking us to interrogate our own discomfort.
Which is not fun.
No, it's not fun at all. But the goal here is to reveal why actively running toward the things that make you feel stupid or uncomfortable is actually the ultimate secret to future-proofing yourself.
Whether you're a builder, an entrepreneur, or just someone trying to navigate a world that is changing so fast.
Exactly.
So, let's start with the invisible cage that most successful people don't even realize they are living inside. Bartlett calls it the dominant convention.
Right.
You pulled a quote from the source material that illustrates this just perfectly. It from a former CEO of a major music business.
Yeah.
And they're sitting at the absolute peak of the CD era, right before digital downloads and streaming just completely took over.
Yes, and it is a chilling statement when you view it through the lens of hindsight.
It really is.
This executive, sitting at the absolute pinnacle of their industry, confidently stated, "People love music, that's why we'll always be in business."
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the sheer arrogance there is fascinating.
Yeah.
And I don't mean arrogance in a malicious way, but like an intellectual arrogance. I'm thinking about the blind spot that a statement like that requires.
It's huge.
It's like someone making an absolute fortune selling massive blocks of ice in the 1800s, right? And they look at a buzzing, complicated new blueprint for an electric refrigerator. And they just say, well, look, people will always want their drinks cold, so we'll always be in the ice block business.
That is the perfect analogy.
They are completely confusing the core human desire, like cold drinks, or the love of music, with their specific temporary delivery method.
That ice block analogy gets right to the heart of how a dominant convention actually operates. Because
Yeah.
the music CEO genuinely thought the business they were in was music.
Right.
But really, their business at that specific moment in time was manufacturing and distributing little plastic discs.
Exactly.
The human desire for music is an eternal constant, but the dominant convention of how to deliver it, the plastic disc, was incredibly fragile.
So fragile.
When the technology shifted to digital, the human love for music didn't change at all. But the convention changed literally overnight.
And, I mean, it makes sense that a CEO would want to protect their plastic disc empire.
Of course.
Their supply chains, their profit margins, their entire operational structure is built around that disc.
Thousands of jobs.
Right. But what I want to understand is the psychological leap from just protecting a business model to actively rejecting reality.
Yeah, that's the jump.
Like, if I'm the Ice King and I see the electric refrigerator, why don't I just buy the refrigerator company or try to build one? Why do I get mad at it?
That is the million-dollar question.
What is happening in the brain that turns a blind spot into aggressive denial?
So to understand that leap, we have to look at the psychology of discomfort.
Okay.
The source material references a famous study by the American psychologist Elliot Aronson, and it beautifully maps out a phenomenon called cognitive dissonance.
I've heard that term thrown around a lot, but what does it actually mean in this context?
So dissonance is basically the severe mental friction that occurs when your beliefs, your identity, or your past actions directly contradict your current reality.
Ah, okay. So if my entire identity is built on being the smartest person in the room regarding plastic discs,
Yeah.
a new technology that renders plastic discs totally useless creates a massive identity crisis for me.
Exactly. You can't just easily accept it.
So how did Aronson actually measure this? Because it sounds hard to quantify.
It is, but Aronson set up this incredibly clever experiment. He created a discussion group that was deliberately designed to be as dull and pompous as possible.
Just painfully boring.
Agonizingly boring, people talking in circles about nothing. But he manipulated how the participants actually joined this group.
Okay.
One set of participants had to go through a really arduous, difficult, embarrassing, and just energy-draining selection process just to gain entry.
Like hazing almost.
Sort of, yeah. Lots of effort. Now, another set of participants was allowed to join immediately with absolutely zero effort. They just walked in.
So both groups are sitting in the exact same room, listening to the exact same agonizingly boring conversation.
With the exact same one.
But one group basically bled to get there,
Yeah.
and the other just walked through an open door.
Yes. And the results illustrate exactly why that music executive couldn't see the digital revolution coming.
What happened?
The people who were given the runaround, the ones who expended a massive amount of effort to join, they reported enjoying the group immensely.
Wait, really?
Yes, they said they found it fascinating.
Oh, wow.
The people who got in easily, however, they were perfectly fine admitting the objective truth, which was that it was a total waste of time.
That is so wild. The brain is literally altering its perception of reality just to avoid the embarrassment of admitting we wasted our time.
Exactly.
But how does that actually manifest in the brain's internal monologue? Like, are they consciously lying to the researchers on a survey, or do they actually believe the boring group is fun?
They genuinely believe it.
That's terrifying.
It is. The mechanism of dissonance reduction happens mostly unconsciously.
Right.
You see, the brain cannot comfortably hold two conflicting truths at the same time.
Okay, so what are the two truths here?
Truth A is, I am a smart, rational person who values my time. Truth B is, I just spent weeks jumping through humiliating hoops to join a group that is objectively terrible.
Got it. And those two cannot coexist.
Right, because admitting truth B would completely destroy truth A. So the brain aggressively rewrites truth B.
It just changes the narrative.
It searches for any tiny detail in that boring conversation to fixate on, inflating its value so that the immense initial effort feels justified.
So if we map that onto a modern professional, cognitive dissonance acts almost like an immune system response.
That's a great way to put it.
When a bizarre new idea or technology enters your industry, your brain treats it like a foreign virus.
Yes.
And the cognitive dissonance is the mental fever, right? It's your ego's immune system attacking the new idea to keep your current identity healthy and intact.
That is a very precise way to look at it. The virus threatens the sunk costs of the host.
Oh, the sunk costs. Right.
And we have to remember the sunk costs aren't just financial.
It's time, too.
Time, energy, reputation. The text actually brings in a quote from Rory Sutherland. He's the vice chairman of the Ogilvy Advertising Group, and it exposes the real anatomy of this immune response.
What does he say?
He says, all too often what matters to people is not whether an idea is true or effective, but whether it fits with the preconceptions of a dominant convention or incumbent.
Right.
And then he explicitly lists what is actually at stake. He says new things put ego, status, jobs, and identities at stake.
Ego, status, jobs, and identities.
It's a lot.
That is so much heavier than just, I spent 10,000 hours learning this old software.
Right. It's not just about the software.
It's, I am the master of this software.
Yeah.
And that mastery is why people ask me for advice. It's how I pay my mortgage. It's why I get invited to speak at conferences.
Exactly. Your whole world is built on it.
So are you saying that the harder we've worked to become an expert in our field, the more likely we are to aggressively reject the next big innovation in that exact field?
Unfortunately, yes. That is exactly what happens.
So if a bizarre new behavior,
No.
let's say a generative AI tool, if that threatens my mastery, I am not actually evaluating the AI based on its utility.
Bro, you're not.
I am evaluating it based on its threat level to my mortgage and my ego.
And this is where the danger really peaks. Because you won't consciously admit that you are terrified of the AI tool.
All right, nobody wants to admit they're scared.
Your ego protects you from feeling that fear by masking it as intellectual superiority.
Oh, that is so true.
You'll look at the AI and you will find tiny, insignificant flaws. Maybe it struggles with rendering hands in an image, or it hallucinates a fact in a summary.
Right, and you latch onto that.
You use those tiny flaws to completely dismiss the entire technological paradigm. You will sit back and say, see, it's a stupid toy. It will never replace a real professional.
Wow. You are rewriting reality to protect your sunk costs, just like the people in Aronson's boring discussion group.
You are. And the real tragedy here is that the longer you have been in an industry, the more sunk costs you have.
So the stronger the immune response.
Yeah. Exactly. Which means the stronger your immune response will be against the future. Expertise can actually become a massive liability if it is not paired with immense self-awareness.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so if our brain is fighting this virus, how does that actually look from the outside? Like behaviorally?
Right.
Because the source material describes a specific behavioral pattern that results from this dissonance, and they call it the ostrich effect.
Yes.
Now, I assume this refers to the old myth of ostriches burying their heads in the sand when they are scared, right?
It does. When a new idea challenges our intelligence or our livelihood, our instinct is to lean away from it.
We just bury our heads.
We bury our heads, we pretend the threat doesn't exist, sort of hoping that if we just ignore the bizarre new trend, it will naturally fade away and the dominant convention will remain secure.
But, and this is what confused me a bit, the text also points out that we don't just passively ignore things.
No, we don't.
We actively attack them, which feels a bit contradictory, right?
How so?
Well, if I'm an ostrich with my head in the sand, I'm hiding. But you're saying I'm also shouting at the thing I'm hiding from.
It is a very proactive form of hiding.
Okay.
Leaning out and aggressively mocking the bizarre new behavior actually makes us feel good temporarily.
Like a dopamine hit.
Exactly. It is a release valve for the cognitive dissonance. By organizing with other quote-unquote experts in your field to collectively laugh at the new thing, you reinforce your shared identity.
Oh, I see.
You get to say, well, we are the smart ones. This new thing is just a silly fad for naive people.
I mean, you see this all the time on social media. Whole groups of professionals just dunking on a new tool.
All the time. But the text delivers a really harsh warning here. An ostrich with its head in the sand is at great risk of being eaten by the very thing it refuses to look at.
That proactive hiding the mockery, that brings us to a really fascinating twist in the logic of this chapter. Here's where it gets really interesting to me.
Yeah.
If the natural human response to truly disruptive innovation is fear masked as mockery, then what does mass criticism actually tell us about the validity of a new idea?
It completely inverts how we should interpret criticism.
Right.
The author argues that passionate criticism of a new technology or behavior is not a red flag.
Okay.
It is actually a massive positive indicator of its potential.
I want to make sure we parse the mechanics of this because it is
Yeah.
so counterintuitive.
It really is.
We usually think that if all the smart people in an industry are laughing at something, that thing must be terrible. Like, it's just a bad idea.
That's the logical assumption.
But the source material is arguing that if a new idea threatens people enough to make them genuinely angry, like if it provokes a coordinated, passionate backlash, That is the very proof that real innovation is happening.
Yes.
Because if it wasn't a legitimate threat to the status quo, no one would expend the energy to get mad about it. They'd just ignore it for real.
Exactly. The energy expenditure is the tell. People don't organize passionate campaigns against things that are genuinely irrelevant.
Nobody protests a slightly different flavor of potato chip.
Exactly. The text states very clearly that true innovation, by definition, should look weird.
Yeah.
It should feel unconventional, it should be misunderstood, and it should sound wrong or stupid or dumb or even illegal to the incumbents of the dominant convention.
Because if everyone instantly understands and praises a new idea the moment they see it, it isn't actually disruptive.
No.
It's just an incremental update.
It's just a slightly colder, slightly cheaper ice block.
Right.
Everyone understands a better ice block. It threatens no one's identity. But the electric refrigerator?
That's
It
terrifying.
requires a completely new mental model that looks bizarre, and it sounds incredibly stupid to an ice salesman.
This completely flips the script on how we view industry trends.
Mm.
We really need to start viewing mass industry mockery not as a sign that an idea is doomed, but as a giant neon sign pointing toward a massive shift.
Yeah.
The mockery is literally just the sound of cognitive dissonance happening at scale.
Mockery is the sound of cognitive dissonance at scale. That captures the dynamic perfectly.
That's a great way to look at it.
And recognizing that dynamic creates a really strict mandate for anyone who wants to avoid being left behind.
Okay, so how do we act on this?
Well, it is not enough to just sit back and observe this phenomenon philosophically. You have to actively change your behavior to counteract your own biology.
Which is hard.
Very hard. You have to learn to lean in.
Which is the title of the law. You must lean in to bizarre behavior.
Exactly.
So how do we actually fight our own ego's immune system? When every fiber of our being is screaming that a new trend is dumb, how do we force ourselves to engage with it?
The mandate provided by the text is highly actionable, though deeply uncomfortable.
Okay.
It demands that when you encounter something you don't understand, or when a new concept makes you feel stupid, you must lean in more.
More, not less.
The discomfort is the compass. When an idea challenges your intelligence, you do not retreat. You investigate.
The book gives some very specific tactical advice here that I found really striking, especially regarding how we curate our digital lives.
Yeah, the digital curation part is key.
It says, don't block people you disagree with. Follow more of them. Don't run from uncomfortable ideas. Run toward them.
Right.
That is the exact opposite of how the modern internet is designed to function.
Oh, it goes completely against the grain of algorithmic curation.
Right, the algorithm wants us comfortable.
We live in an ecosystem that actively encourages us to build echo chambers,
Yeah.
to block or mute anything that causes cognitive friction, and to surround ourselves only with voices that validate our existing dominant conventions.
We're basically using technology to dig customized, heavily fortified digital ostrich holes to bury our heads in.
That is exactly what we're doing.
Because if I see a weird new financial model or a bizarre new social platform, and I instantly feel that dismissive superiority that, I'm too smart for this feeling, my current habit is to just scroll past it.
Or make fun of it.
Right, quote tweet it with a sarcastic joke to get validation from my peers.
And by doing so, you are insulating yourself from the bizarre, which means you are actively insulating yourself from the future.
Wow.
The author really emphasizes the stakes here. You don't want to be the entrepreneur who misses the next technological revolution because you were busy mocking it on a message board.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the marketing director who dismisses the next massive shift in consumer attention, or the creative who dismisses a new medium. You just cannot afford to be a lean-out person.
It feels like the overarching argument here is really about our relationship with risk.
Yes.
There is this illusion that if I just stay in my lane, if I master the current tools and ignore the bizarre fringes, I'm playing it safe.
It feels safe.
But with the exponential rate of change in the world right now, staying in your comfortable lane where you are already the expert is actually the most reckless thing you can do. Taking no risks is the biggest risk.
The text makes this point explicitly, linking the necessity of leaning into the broader human experience of risk and reward.
Okay, what does it say?
It states, you have to risk failure to succeed. You have to risk heartbreak to love. You have to risk criticism for the applause. You have to risk the ordinary to achieve the extraordinary.
That's powerful.
It is. Engaging with the bizarre requires you to risk looking foolish in the short term to ensure you are actually relevant in the long term.
Right, because if you live avoiding risk, you're just risking missing out on life entirely.
Exactly.
So the immediate practical application for someone listening to this deep dive isn't to just, blindly adopt every single weird trend that pops up on their feed.
No, definitely not.
It's about auditing your own reactions.
Yes, self-awareness.
The next time you catch yourself saying, oh, I just don't get it, or that's a dumb trend for teenagers, or that will never replace the way we do things, now you need to train yourself to recognize that exact feeling of dismissive superiority, not as a truth, but as a trigger.
A trigger to act.
Right. It should be the trigger to stop talking, open your browser, and spend 30 minutes genuinely researching the thing you just wanted to mock.
Exactly. You curate your environment to include bizarre behavior. You actively seek out the most intelligent proponents of the bizarre idea, and you study their arguments.
Even if you end up disagreeing with them.
Oh, totally. You don't have to ultimately agree with them. You might research a new technology and conclude that it truly is a dead end.
Right.
But that conclusion must come from rigorous investigation, not from cognitive dissonance.
That's the difference.
You have to tolerate the temporary pain of feeling like a novice.
So if we take a step back and synthesize all of these moving parts, the music executive blinded by their own product, the agonizing reality of sunk costs mapped out by Aronson, the proactive hiding of the ostrich effect, and this really difficult mandate to lean into discomfort. What is the foundational insight here? What is the real soul of this chapter?
If we distill all of this down, the core insight is a radical reframing of what actually holds us back.
Okay.
The greatest barrier to your future success, to your ability to innovate and adapt, is almost never a lack of intelligence.
Right.
It's not a lack of resources or a lack of opportunity. The greatest barrier is your own ego trying desperately to protect your current status.
It's just the ego, disguised as intellect.
That's exactly what it is. True growth and true future-proofing require you to develop a massive tolerance for cognitive dissonance.
You have to sit with the friction.
Yes. You must be willing to look at the bizarre, lean in, and just embrace the humbling experience of feeling like an absolute beginner all over again.
And that's terrifying for experts.
It is. But the people who have the patience, the self-awareness, and the courage to endure that discomfort are the ones who will own the future.
And everyone else?
Those who let their egos win will simply be left behind, clinging tightly to their melting ice blocks.
Clinging to their melting ice blocks. Embrace the humbling experience of feeling like an absolute beginner all over again. That is not an easy thing to do when society rewards us so heavily for projecting absolute certainty.
Right, nobody wants to look like they don't know what they're doing.
But as we've seen, that certainty is usually just the dominant convention blinding us.
Absolutely.
Well, we've talked a lot today about the broad scope of industries, new technologies, and how to embrace the bizarre on a macro level to future-proof your career. But I want to leave you with something much more intimate to think about. Look at your own daily life, your own specific workflows, and your own conversations this past week. What is the one new tool, trend, or idea you've been aggressively making fun of recently? Think about it. And if you're truly honest with yourself in the quiet of your own mind, are you mocking it because it's genuinely, fundamentally flawed? Or are you mocking it because you're terrified that if it works, it means you have to become a beginner again? Next time, we'll explore what happens when you take that exact psychological discomfort and try to weaponize it to build incredible, life-changing habits. Until then, stay curious and don't be afraid to lean in.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.